Where's the light at the end of the tunnel for United right now?
That May is 3 months away. I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what else as a Manchester United fan you cling to, because let's be honest, as kind of impotent as Manchester United have looked for some time, the only real game changer, consistent game changer within that dressing room has been Amad Diallo, and now he's up for the rest of the season. So you look at what's there, and um, you're left kind of scratching your head in frustration. I'm not sure where the difference is going to come. The one player of true quality in that current lineup, I guess you'd have to call it, would be Bruno Fernandes. Um, but he's been a little bit inconsistent, and maybe you can blame the supporting cast for that. But whichever way, they're just no individuals that make a difference for them. So you're not sure who's going to be that difference.
It's difficult when you get a game on paper because they've got 3 home games after this Everton game at Goodison, and they're normally, it's Man United, it's Old Trafford. It's like, okay, it's 3 points. How many are they going to score? But it doesn't work like that these days. So the league is finish as high as you can, and they're not going to get a European spot next season through the league. Now, there's still a Champions League spot up for grabs for the winners of the Europa League. And for some reason, usually just due to volume of cash, them and Spurs are the 2 favourites.
Yeah.
They'd be carrying my cash, doubt they'd be carrying yours. So next up for them, would you fancy Manchester United against any one of these possible 4 opponents? And we don't know who it is yet. Real Sociedad, Galatasaray, AZ Alkmaar, or Midtjylland?
Given what we've seen from Manchester United over the last couple of seasons, nobody holds any fear. And none of that 4 holds any fear in coming up against Manchester United, for all the reasons that we've just detailed about their lack of firepower, lack of true quality. Yes, Manchester United are still a big club. Old Trafford, I'm reluctant to say it's a difficult place to go, but they will get a big crowd. If they decide on the day, they can be noisy and maybe create somewhat of an atmosphere, but it just doesn't hold the kind of mystique or the fear that it once did as a football ground. So anybody coming to Manchester United right now, think they can write history.
Amad Diallo's the top scorer, and he's hurt. He's got 6. Bruno's got 5. So it's a case of where are the goals coming from? And look, there are some teams that 1 is enough because they can rely on their defense. So A, where's the goals coming from? And B, is this a setup and a system that he swears by, Ruben Amorim? Does it work with the addition of only one kind of key player in the January transfer window to play at wingback?
Well, you only have to look at the game at Spurs for, I think, all the answers you need for that. 1, yes, Bruno Amorim is going to stick to the system that he believes in. He's not going to adjust, but then saying that, he's not under the pressure of needing a result, given that, he was only appointed a couple of months ago. So he can kind of stick to his guns and how he sees fit, and knows that come next August, he will still be Manchester United manager, almost regardless of what happens between now and the end of May. Where the goals come from and their firepower, and teams only needing 1. Again, look at Spurs. Spurs scored 1. And while you can make the argument that Vicario on the day was Spurs man of the match, I thought he made the saves that you would expect him to. And while I was sitting there watching that game, and while, yes, maybe I'm biased, but I have a feeling I'm not alone, Vicario was Spurs' outstanding player. At no point I felt a goal is coming here, even when Manchester United pressured late on and Spurs kind of dropped deeper and deeper because they're protecting this 1-0 lead. I sat there thinking, yeah, there's a 1-0. I maybe they could have scored, and maybe we all know how this game works. Things just kind of at times come from nothing. But at no point did I sit there thinking, yeah, Manchester United are banging on the door here, and they're about to score.
Given the team,
sorry, Matt. I'll contrast that, and as I did on FC, because I think the same day or the next day was Liverpool Wolves. Liverpool had a 2-goal lead. Wolves scored, and Wolves came banging on the door. And I was watching that one and thought Wolves are going to score here any minute. And as we know, it that turned out to be 2-1. I just make that point to contrast how kind of flat Manchester United were. And while, again, you know that a goal can a lot of times come from absolutely nowhere, I just never felt it in the way that I did Wolves at Anfield.
I always think in life, problem identification is easy. Solutions to problems are a lot harder. And it's easy to sit here and kick Man United when they're down. But look, if you want to do that on FC or Dan or whoever, I think it's a case of, for any team, I mean, I've got no skin in the game here. I want to see if there are solutions available. And it's tough when you don't have a transfer window. So what are the solutions and what's the best opportunity for Manchester United? Is it with the teams in and the teams already out, the FA Cup, where they've got Fulham next, or the Europa League, where they don't yet know their opponents?
I'm going to sit on the fence in this one, in that, while, yes, the big boys, so to speak, are out of the FA Cup. And I think when we were discussing this last, we almost had Newcastle as the favourites. I mean, Newcastle have had their stumbles of late. They've, still been a pretty good season, but they've had their stumbles of late. But they kind of among the favourites to win the FA Cup. At the same time, the Europa League offers an opportunity for Manchester United, and yes, between them and Spurs, they're joint favourites, but I'm pretty sure that Lazio are still in that competition. Roma are still in that competition. I'm trying to think that there are a couple others in there that you just feel.
Athletic Club from Bilbao.
Athletic Club, there you go. That you feel right now are better than Manchester United, and I know it's a cup competition, and so it's again that can throw up as a surprise as much as any. So I'm a little bit on the fence in that one, because while again Manchester United themselves have played a part in big favourites going out to the FA Cup. I'm thinking about Arsenal here. I think this version of Manchester United, a Diallo-less Manchester United, let's call it. Again, don't worry anybody.
It seems to be the case they play better against better teams. I mean, I know
because they have to sit back. Because they have to sit back. But again, that sitting back and having space for the likes of Amad Diallo to run into is one thing. Garnacho as being the most viable option. And I hold my hands up here. At the start of the season, I said if Manchester United was successful, they had to rely on Garnacho a lot more. But he has just failed to deliver. He's failed to deliver. And again, you saw that against Spurs.
I spoke about their next away game is at Everton. Then they've got 3 home games, including that FA Cup tie. And then they go to Arsenal. So let's chat a bit about the Gunners here, because we didn't know the answer. Who's going to be scoring the goals? Who's going to be the Arsenal goal hero? Who's going to be the striker or the false nine? And now it's simple. He comes off the bench, and Mikel Merino, who's a central midfielder, is the answer for one game. So do you start him in that position? And if you don't, because I felt sorry for Raheem Sterling. He's a shell of what he used to be. He's not the answer. So what do you do for Arsenal this weekend? They've got West Ham United, your former team.
Start Merino. Listen, and there's been a lot of discussion about this on the show as well. I think you have to start Merino because you don't have another option. Now, I was making the point maybe a month or so ago that I would have played Nwaneri through the middle. I wouldn't have played Kai Havertz. But then Bukayo Saka goes down, and maybe it's more than a month, but whatever. Bukayo Saka goes down, and Nwaneri has to play on that right-hand side, and you can't now shift him into the middle. He has a job to do out wide, so he has to play. So now you've got to find somebody else to come through the middle. Okay, the Kai Havertz is now out for the season. Raheem Sterling is due back. Probably end of March. I know there's been some reports more mid-March, but let's say end of March by the time he finds full fitness and is back to his best. And at that point, maybe you move Nwaneri up to the middle. Other than that, Arsenal have no option. Gabriel Jesus out for the season. Kai Havertz, we've already discussed. Who else is there? And I don't know. And so therefore, Mikel Merino, given his impact the other day, against Leicester. Has to play. You have to try it. You have to try it.
I don't think there's that much difference between him and Kai Havertz, and that they're not a striker, and Havertz likes to come from deep. We saw Mikel Merino scoring the extra time winner at the Euros for Spain. He didn't have a good time at Newcastle. When he was playing at Real Sociedad, he kind of played left of a kind of midfield, either a 2 or a 3. But every time he got the opportunities to get forward, he's certainly got an eye for goal, and he's clearly a finisher as well. Is there something a potential? Because we think Arsenal, we think 4-3-3. Is there maybe something to think that Merino could play, but maybe be in that kind of floating number 10, false 9 position? Is that something they could do?
Absolutely, because he's not going to play with his back to goal. He's not going to hold the play up and invite others on. So you have to adjust. And I think that's exactly what Arsenal and Mikel Arteta are now forced to do. Merino drops a little bit deeper, plays a little bit more, and they play a little bit more as a flatter front three, so to speak. And that may be the solution, because right now, Mark, as we said, I just don't think there's another option. I just don't know who else to turn to.
So I spoke when we're discussing Manchester United about trying to be glass half full, and let's continue that with Arsenal. Okay, nobody has conceded fewer goals in the Premier League, but only Manchester City and Liverpool have scored more goals. A side who've scored the third most goals, pretty much without a goal scorer. I mean, Gabriel Jesus isn't played much at all, and Kai Havertz is a false 9, if you want, at best. Yeah. So they find a way. Now, we spoke about Manchester United and maybe only needing one if their defence is good. Arsenal have got that. So could we see a more pragmatic Arsenal between now and the end of the season?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right to point to their defence as being the kind of foundations of those successes, because 1-0 will do it. And as stingy a defence as they have, and while we question who plays up front as that out-and-out striker, they still pose a significant threat from set pieces. So it's there. They're not. Maybe the argument is they're not going to blow teams out the water 4 and 5. But again, kind of given how good they are defensively, they only need 1 or 2 to see games out, and they can find that. They can find that. They while again you want to contrast with Manchester United, they have quality on the park. Maybe not in that centre forward position, but Arsenal, even with their injuries, have quality on the park.
Prior to the weekend, Arsenal had scored the second most goals in the Premier League, and then Manchester City hit 4 against your former club Newcastle, and they look good. Marmoush was outstanding, and he's a big talent. He showed that in the Bundesliga. He might be the focal point now, with Erling Haaland potentially missing for some weeks because of a knee problem. Still waiting on an update there from Pep Guardiola. What about City going forward? Because they weren't back to their best against Newcastle, but they had that swagger we've not seen for a while.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect description to it, Mark. They did have a little bit of swagger, and I love Marmoush playing up front on that left-hand side alongside Erling Haaland. And you're right, we have to wait to see how that or his fitness. But I thought it worked wonderfully well, and I thought Manchester City looked really good against Newcastle the other day. You're absolutely right. Played with a confidence that we hadn't seen for some time. I'm a little bit reluctant to go all in, because we're only 2 or 3 weeks removed from Manchester City taking advantage of poor Leicester City, and Pep Guardiola announcing that Manchester City were back, and then they are quickly humbled. And while I thought this was a better performance than against Newcastle, and we certainly saw against Leicester, and one absolute that you can build on, I'm also maybe reminded and had my fair share of nightmares of Newcastle getting absolutely humiliated at home to Bournemouth. So you know that Newcastle can be very Jekyll and Hyde, or certainly have been over the last few weeks. So now you have an opportunity to go and prove it to kind of refine that swagger, or continue with that swagger against Real Madrid. Let's see if you can. But for all the criticism around Manchester City, you can only work your way back to your previous best, one game at a time. And the Newcastle game was a very good game in that regard.
Well, he's in the squad. Whether he plays against Real Madrid remains to be seen. Thankfully, it looks like he's avoided serious injury on his knee, Erling Haaland. But the point is the same with regards to Marmoush.
But to that point around Erling Haaland, going down when nobody's around you is always worrying.
What did you make of Nico Gonzalez's performance against Newcastle? Signed from Porto, former Barca player. Rodri light, because everyone needs Rodri and they don't have him. So it's like he's the next X, Y, or Z. Thought he looked good.
So I thought City looked very good in midfield, and you have to pay them credit. When the starting lineups came up and City had Nico Gonzalez and Gundogan in midfield, and Newcastle had out Guimaraes, Murphy, and I'm trying to think who the third defensive midfielder was. I thought Newcastle are going to dominate this midfield here, and it couldn't have been. It couldn't have been any more different. And while I absolutely will praise Gundogan for his quality, you've seen that from day one at Manchester City. This isn't that Gundogan. He doesn't have those legs. So when those lineups came out, I thought, and let's be honest, we hadn't seen much of Nico Gonzalez, given his early injury and having to come off against Leyton Orient. I thought Newcastle are going to completely dominate the middle of the park. So give both Gundogan and, to your question, Mark, Nico Gonzalez their credit, because I couldn't have been more wrong in that pre-game feeling.